All right, welcome aboard, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. And Mike, how are you?
Hey, doing great.
I entitled the program The Hidden Hand of the Deep State only because we know they're not going anywhere. We
Well, it's
can't
not
know.
so hidden, but
It's not hidden, but we know that they're out there. We know that they're not moving quietly. We don't know what they're doing because they are hidden. We're not insiders. And if we were, we wouldn't talk about it. Right. But I think that we need to look at what is known as a way to try to understand what they're up to, because what President Trump and the MAGA movement is doing right now is revolutionizing not only this country, but the entire world. And they're doing it in a way that is most unpleasant for the deep state. They have been investing in their power since the beginning of time,
yeah.
but more recently since the Wilson administration, as we've talked about, with their implementation of the what Steve Bannon calls accurately the administrative state. And they have continued apace ever since in their gradual quest to control everything and to do it through their octopus like reach into all elements of our lives and of all of our institutions. And now you have President Trump really taking a hammer to it. I heard Steve Bannon, and I agree with him, that Trump is the most important president, and he's right in the same league as George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. That Washington was the father of the country. He was very much the main figure in establishing the American Republic. Lincoln established the Second American Republic, for better or for worse, after the destruction of slavery and of essentially a consolidation of the country. And now Trump is restoring the American Republic by bringing us back to the original intent of the founding generation and bringing us back to the very philosophy of the American Republic, which is that we derive our rights not from the state, but from, as Jefferson said, the creator. Um, it's we are a nation, but we're not nationalists in that the nation state means everything. The nation state has content, and in the American philosophy, that content is as simply a mechanism by which we set up a means to preserve our natural rights under God and not worship of the state. But the administrative state wants to control everything. They want to replace God. They want to transform our nature, which is of course impossible. And they mean business. So to bring things up to right now, we have to recognize that they will go to extraordinary means to continue to hold on to power. And the big question that I've had this question in recent years. I've had it since the coup d'etat that took Trump out. And that is, are they on their last gasp in terms of dying because enough American sovereign citizens are waking up to our agency as Americans? Or are they in advanced stages where they're really going to consolidate everything and freedom will end? What say you?
All right. What's happening, and you can see it, is that they're in the last stages of desperation. All right.
Mhm.
These ridiculous attacks by left wing judges on, in this case, the immigration policy. And again, they've chosen the wrong standard here. All right. I mean, if there were some real abuses going on that affected American citizens that people might care about, but it just proves the bankruptcy of the whole movement that your poster boy is a gang member, wife beater. Uh,
Yeah, child
so
trafficker.
yeah, so what is the deal? Well, They're trying to find anything they can to gum up the works. Okay, what they would love is you have 20 million illegals and you're going to go through 2 years of court proceedings on each one. It's not going to work. It's going to fall apart, and it just shows you. And again, it's terrible to repeat myself. The judiciary is in really rotten shape. Never mind that they can go forum shopping. They don't have to try very hard to find bad judges, right? They're all over the place. They probably have been for a long time, but it's going to fail. That's all they've got is this nonsense by somehow positing that a lowly district court judge can overrule the president. I mean, there was a meme out there a couple of weeks ago about Trump quitting his job as president and becoming a district court judge because he'd have more power.
It's this is one of the prongs of their power. This is one of the areas which they have thoroughly infiltrated. This is why they are using that, in a sense, that fortress to attack the freedom movement, and they are continuing the lawfare that they launched against Trump while he was a private citizen, where they tried to jail him and bankrupt him and kill him. And now they're doing it to the whole country. And there was some it seems like there's been coordination since day one on doing this. I think one of the James O'Keefe's group has uncovered something. I think it was O'Keefe. I don't know who did it, but they uncovered the fact that they're having these Zoom meetings where they literally are saying, how are we going to slow Trump down this week? Who's going to take the reins on this case or on that case? And they are delving into an area that is a holy grail for these internationalist deep staters, and that is open borders. I mean, there's no secret that under the Biden regime, they swung open the borders, literally. They stopped deportations and they welcomed in tens of millions of illegal aliens from who knows where. Not only did they welcome them in, but they paid huge monies. They diverted funds from agencies that Americans expect to serve Americans, like FEMA, for example, for natural disasters, and who knows where else, USAID, and they used it to house, feed, and transport millions of people in a very planned resettlement across the United States. Now, why they did this, they'll never say. They'll never even admit they did it. I mean, Mayorkas lied his head off when asked about this in Congress. But the fact is that they did do it, and now they want to preserve it. So they are actually taking the audacious step of claiming that the executive office of the presidency does not have the authority to deport people. It's really...
You're exactly right. But the problem is, you would think if they had brain one, they would find a more worthy illegal alien than this putz that they've been raising up. That I frankly don't understand.
Oh, apparently they're looking for more of them.
And all the people that have been deported, they could have found one guy who got somehow abused, who got caught up in this mess. But they're not even talented enough to do that. I mean, I have spoken many times about the entire bankruptcy of the liberal movement, going back to the war on poverty, where they couldn't even fix the life of the guy they had on TV in 1964.
Mm-hmm. Now they're on pilgrimages to El Salvador. You'd almost think that he's going to be named the next pope. I mean, it's just, it's really very strange, and I don't think it's working for them. They could have not picked a worse, less sympathetic figure.
But here's the thing, Chuck. Why did they? Why were they that stupid?
I mean, I just think that they're grabbing at whatever they could get. They got some kind of a technical matter where he had some local court ruling saying that he couldn't be deported to El Salvador because other gang members might kill him. First of all, I think I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me pretty clear that anyone in this country illegally can be deported for any reason. They don't
There's
need
no question about that. And uh, it's been stated by the president of El Salvador that this gang that perhaps existed 5, 10 years ago that he was afraid of doesn't exist anymore.
right.
But again, more than that, how lazy can you be? This is your poster boy? Please, what's wrong with you?
Well, it doesn't even matter what he did. The fact is, he was here illegally, and he can be deported. And as, by the way, can people who hold green cards, even if
Yeah,
they are behaving in a way that is seen as criminal, or if they're involved in aiding or abetting an organization or an entity overseas that is seen as an enemy, is listed as an enemy of the United States. I mean, here in Boston, for example, Jeff Cooner, who I listen to on WRKO, he's a great talk show host. He's a naturalized citizen. He's from Canada. He said he came here with a student visa, which eventually became a working visa, which eventually became a green card, which eventually he got citizenship. But even in that situation, he understands that if he's found to be involved with some radical group like Hamas, for example, or Hezbollah, they can kick him out.
yeah.
They can just rescind his citizenship. That's just the way it is. He's not born. If you're born here, that's another story. But if you're a naturalized citizen, it's not 100% that you have absolute carte blanche in these matters. And the whole idea, I mean, I'm hearing people wailing about this woman picked up in at Tufts. And oh, it's so terrible. They showed up with masks. All of a sudden, they don't like masks, right?
Yeah,
You-
you notice that. You
yeah,
notice.
right. Suddenly, and she was the co-author of an article which was published in the Tufts newspaper, which was trying to stop the university from ending their relationship with a group that has connections to Hamas, and that she was. I don't, she wasn't necessarily a ringleader of some of the real rioting that went on at Tufts, but she was involved in it, and she's a guest. She's not a citizen, and to my way of thinking, they have every right to cancel her visa. And in fact, there's language in that visa. Even the New York Times admits this, not directly, but you can look into it, where they do have that language in the visa saying you cannot be involved in political activities uh, in terms of aiding or supporting overseas entities that are
Right.
contrary to American interests. And what I'd say to those people is, what if they were supporting like a white supremacy government? They'd be the first ones to have them deported. I mean,
I mean, here's the thing. Forget all that. Where were these people on the January 6th? Where was their due process?
yeah, exactly. Those poor people rotted in prison for 4 years
So
without even facing
it's
a charge.
completely bankrupt. It's not worthy of any thought. And again, it's punctured with so much BS.
But
It's
they
just,
are, but they are doing, as you said, Mike, they're gumming up the works in terms of, I mean, and it's kind of unexpected. I mean, I thought that they might be an uproar if Trump did what they claimed he was going to do, which he hasn't done, which is a massive deportation of millions of people put on planes and just trotted over the border. But that's not what's happened.
yeah,
He's doing what everybody, even during the campaign, even Harris, not that she made any sense, but all said they wanted to do, which was to deport violent criminals and subversives. And that's all he's really focusing on. And they're stopping it in every way.
I
And
think it's going the whole thing's going to stop before the midterms. Because how do you campaign as some idiot congressman? Well, what have you done the last 2 years? Well, we tried to get Garcia back in the country. No, no. What have you done for your constituents?
yes, but they're also, we have to talk about the fact that they are doing different designs on just about every aspect of what Trump is trying to do. Trump was on the verge on the foreign policy stand he was on the verge of getting an agreement to end the war in Ukraine. And when Zelensky was set to go to the White House, before he went there, he had lunch with radical Democrats and deep staters, and they got him all cranked up. He doesn't strike me as being the brightest bulb in the chandelier anyway, but they got him all cranked up. You can't let Trump do this. Not because, I mean, they just don't want to have Trump get anything remotely looking like a success. They don't want him to get the Nobel
Well,
Peace
they hate
Prize.
Trump more than they love the country.
But
As
they were able to accomplish scuttling that meeting. And now, of course, Russia is dropping missiles on Kiev, and it's a freaking disaster. They just Trump is saying he's just gonna back away from the whole thing and wash his
Well, they
hands.
should. Who cares? What's
Well,
the interest of the U.S. in
that's
this?
right. That's right. But it would have been a great thing if he could have brokered a peace agreement, and they scuttled it, mainly just out of pure spite. As far as Israel goes, I'm not going to mince words here. I'm uncomfortable about it, but I think that there is evidence that Israel wants to draw the United States into a war in Iran. They want at least the United States to support them bombing the Iranian nuclear facilities. I'm against it. I think it's a mistake. I think that Israel made a mistake to draw the United States, or tried to draw the United States into the Iraq war also. I've heard Jeffrey Sachs talk about this, who was part of he was an insider. I mean, I think he's a big hedge fund guy who was involved with Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and he tried to help them, get into capitalism. I mean, he's got some issues, but he's talked about this honestly, that the Israelis have their own reasons, and they do, and it's fine, but they want to draw the United States into foreign wars, their wars. And there's rumors about, and I'm not here to say this is a fact. I probably would be censored for saying you don't mess with Israel, but that they are involved with trying to get rid of Pete Hegseth, mainly because Hegseth apparently opposed the U.S. doing this with Israel, getting involved with Iran. And so they want to get rid of him. So that's why all this stuff is coming out about, the signal gate and all this garbage.
Yeah.
And, I don't doubt any of that. Now, is that the Israeli deep state? No, it's Israel openly and brazenly stating its interests. And I respect those interests. They want to defeat Iran, fine. But I don't think that the United States needs to get involved in it. I don't think we want to get involved in a proxy war against Iran. I think that could be done with negotiation. It doesn't need to have a shooting war. If Israel wants to go ahead, I mean, they have a lot of guts if they want to take that on. Maybe they could forge some alliances with some of the surrounding countries that also hate and fear Iran, like maybe Saudi Arabia. But I don't think that the United States should get into it. And I think the deep state wants to ally itself with Israel in this case and draw the United States into a foreign war, not because they love Israel, but for their
No,
own.
it's a military-industrial complex.
That's right. Yeah, it's the same reason why they're drawing us into Ukraine. They don't give a damn if they have if tens of thousands of soldiers are murdered and killed on the front, and Ukrainian young men from Ukraine and from Russia. They don't care. They just want to sell their weaponry. They want to promote their international war, their perpetual war, the policy that that Charles Austin Beard, the great American historian, called perpetual war for perpetual peace, and that has been in place since Wilson. This idea that there's constant wars around the world that further develop and embroil all the nations of the world into a gradual weakening of their societies and morality, and emerge into a one world government.
Well, yeah, that started. I don't know, World War One. Why was the U.S. in World War One? There was no reason.
None. We should never have gotten into it, and we probably shouldn't have gotten into World War II either.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you, and maybe it took the space of all these years But as a boomer, I can tell you that as a little kid in the 1950s, a day did not go by when you didn't hear what a wonderful job we did and we saved the world and blah blah blah, blah every single day about this.
Me too.
And somehow it took a while for people to notice that, well, we won the war, but we lost the peace. And no, it was a total mess, a total disaster. We didn't win anything.
Well, what we did was we then
We-
handed Europe over to the Soviet Union, and it just was it created more of a division and more of a dialectic, if you will.
yeah,
And then we were drawn into wars that were set up in advance so that we would lose in order to weaken the United States, like Korea and Vietnam.
yeah.
So,
And that was a very dispassionate description of it, but that's exactly true. So,
so here comes Trump, and he's like, for 30 years as a public figure, he's been talking about ending these perpetual wars, that the United States has no interest in it. We can support our allies. We can trade with our allies. We can have relations, but we're not going to go over and act like gendarmes and have our young people get killed on a battlefield. And that generally we should stop the killing. All that does is exacerbate the war. And so he's taking action on that. He's disengaging the United States in these wars that they are constantly trying to set up, in this case, Ukraine. Now there's agitation between India and Pakistan. I don't know if that's going to draw any war, the United States into that. I hope not, especially since both of them have nuclear bombs. But generally speaking, Trump on that front is really revolutionizing the world. He's saying, look,
but look who he's taking on, the defense industry. Right now, with what he's trying to do with tariffs, he's taking on Wall Street. And people are suddenly discovering that, Wall Street really doesn't care too much about the little guy.
Well, that's the third thing he's doing. He's rejiggering the entire world economy. Yeah. He is saying that the nation state has to operate in its own interests first, not these internationalists and these central bankers who shift money and back and forth and make a buck off of businesses and labor. And that basically he, by imposing tariffs, which is a system that it's a basic function of any sovereign nation, and it's certainly been done in this country going back to Washington, who would probably put in the first tariff, that he's not only going to raise funds by charging a fee for imports from other countries, which will reduce the tax burden on the American citizen. And that's how our country primarily raised funds in the past, certainly before 1913, when they started to, instead of tariff other countries, they would tariff every American citizen.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, what a great argument that there are people, again, I mean, no one born in 1913 is still alive, but what did we do before 1913? No one ever thinks about that. And
right. The country was prosperous. That was a golden age in growth. People have no idea. Between Jackson ending the second bank at the end of his term and the implementation of the U.S. Income tax, which coincided with the reestablishment of a central bank, the Fed, right, in 1913, that was an age of unprecedented growth in this country on all levels. Thomas Jefferson, who was against the bank and who was, he wasn't, he kind of was into an agrarian society. Nevertheless, he imposed an embargo on imports, which at first was bad news for certain industries, but it led to a huge growth in American manufacturing and American industry. Those are facts of history. And that's exactly what Trump is trying to do. He's protecting American industry and American labor. I think he could even take a next step and protect American investments as well by basically putting in a means by which foreign investment can be regulated. But putting that aside, He is doing this as a way to help generate domestic manufacturing, domestic business, and domestic labor. And it's working. It's working. You have big money coming in, these investments. There's a Japanese company, I forget the name, they just said they're going to commit something like $300 billion to develop their product inside the United States so that they don't have to pay the tariff. And there's a couple of others like that as well. I think there's a German company that's doing this. And, it's an incredible strategy. I think that Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent explained it bluntly. He said, we're moving from an economy based on Wall Street to an economy based on Main Street.
Right.
Right? I mean, and this is like, the left has been claiming that they want to do this forever. We've been hearing about this. We got to help the little guy. We got to stop the businesses and stop these big corporate multicultural. Well, Trump has totally pulled the rug out from under them because that's exactly what he's doing. Not only that, but he's raising taxes on the rich. He's going to let the tax cut expire, and he put in a tax on hedge fund managers, to help pay for things. Hallelujah, right? I mean, of course, the libertarians and people like, Sean Hannity and them, they're going to scream about that, and Grover Norquist, right? I mean, those, but that's not really it's kind of old. You can't have people like Bill Gates, and I mean, even Elon Musk is screaming also, by the way, almost had a fist fight with Bessent over it.
Huh.
But that's too bad. I mean, this is what Trump has been talking about for 30 years, and it's exactly what he's doing, and they're flipping out over it.
Well, they are, because they were talking about it, never did anything.
No,
when all these people were talking about moving Israeli, the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and this goes back to what? Bush the first,
right?
So Trump actually does it, right? No, they're just they're losing the average guy, the Democrats. I mean, again, you just have to, as the greatest Jew of all time said, judge them by their fruits. All right. So what's the fruit? We're raising up some gang member, illegal alien. Okay. You go, girl. That's what you want to do. In the meantime, I think the MAGA agenda is proving that that's what's working for the American people, and the people on the left just can't deal with it, because maybe they truly believe that. Wait a minute, we're for the people. Aren't we supposed to be for the people? That's what I learned in the Model UN.
He's pulled the rug out from under their entire agenda. He's defending women, but with Title IX, making sure that you don't get these greasy guys going in there and giving them concussions. And
how can the Democrats possibly be in favor of that? But they are.
How can they vote against a bill that said that illegal aliens who commit rape and violence can be deported? Oh, they voted against that. Elizabeth Warren voted against that. I mean, why? I hope that that's brought up in these next elections. It's like, it's so spiteful. They just won't support anything. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talked about this as one of the reasons why he went on the Trump team. He was like, look, I don't agree. I'm a liberal Democrat, and I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the conservative things. However, I care about this country, and what I see is people who are just doing spiteful things because Trump did it. He pointed out, like, for example, that when the Biden regime was installed, they canceled Trump's preparations to build a wall at the Mexican border, and hundreds of millions of dollars of material just sat there rusting in the sun. So they ended up spending another piece of money to build their own wall with their own color and their own look, because they couldn't give, and they ended up not really doing much anyway. But the point is that they cannot do something even though they know it's a good idea because it might make Trump look good. I remember when Trump dismantled, he dismantled Obama's cages, which he had set up to put children in from illegal aliens crossing the border. You had people like the Squad all vote against that because Trump proposed it. They voted on a bill that would have offered humanitarian aid to people coming across the border, children being, hustled over the border by coyotes and probably put into sex slavery. That this bill would have helped provide some money and some support for them. They voted against that because Trump supported it. Because Trump, it's like, you can go over and over. Somebody should do a book on this. It's it's where they are. It's complete.
Have you noticed? I mean, when you're describing this, it's like you're dealing with a bunch of junior high girls, right? Oh, we're gonna get Susie. I mean, it's like I can't believe it, and I also can't believe that the media doesn't jump on this. It's so absurd. But I guess they have their own agenda.
They're all part of it. I mean, this is the deep state utterly. That's the spokespeople. I mean, to the point where they showed pictures of the man from Maryland, right? The Maryland father, and this is Lester Holt is notorious for this. They whited out his knuckles,
Yeah.
which had like gang symbols. It reminds me of when Lester Holt did a story of this woman who stopped this crazy woman who was coming out stabbing other women at a party. She happened to be black, not that that matters. And they wanted to make it into another, like a George Floyd type thing. So when they ran the footage, they shaded out using technology the knife in her hand that she was slashing people with. I mean, it's that bad. It's complete.
Here's the thing: they're getting their comeuppance now because Trump put in all these new media figures in the White House press corps, and they say, "Wow, are you a real journalist?" And it's like a joke. Okay, these are people that are on YouTube sites with millions of subs. They get far more views than these idiots on these conventional news networks. So what is the argument?
I think that Natalie Winters, who represents
Yes.
and she's tremendous. She completely flattened this. I think he was like an NBC guy, reporter, said, "Why are you here? You're not a legitimate journalist. What's your background?" And she goes, "We're here because people like you spent 4 years lying about Biden. You never really talked about the fact that he was incompetech mentis. And so that's why we're here. We're here because the American people got sick and tired of your lies. So don't tell me about real journalism." But she's good. She cuts right to the middle of it. And also Carolyn Levitt is another one. You don't mess with her. And the thing that makes her who she is that she's just so basically honest. She does her homework. She studies the issue. She knows what's coming. And she just goes out and she speaks plainly. She speaks basically. It's not all this kind of what French scholar Elaine Benescon called the language of totalitarianism. All this double talk, like my rabbi gets up. You literally, I'm asleep within maybe 2 minutes of his voice, and he just goes into. And he's not the only one; they all do it. This double talk and this innuendo and this kind of sophistic style that was the classic of the Biden years. I mean, you see it when they testify in Congress. They're being nominated, and they won't answer a question. Instead, they get into these shibboleths that have no meaning whatsoever, and they just string them together. A good example of that is Supreme Court Justice Jackson. If you listen to her question, it's like it doesn't really add up. It's all these kind of great sounding shibboleths, all delivered with this phony British accent where they just come across. And, meanwhile, you get somebody like a Carolyn Levitt. She gets up there, she throws a good rock in the middle of it all. Says, "Really? Here's what's going on. This is what he believes. This is what we're doing. It's a different day here. It's a different culture. We're not playing that old game. And but I guess that what I want to talk about is what are they going to do? They're not going to lie down and take this. They are going to do something.
Right,
And
but as we talked about before the election, they don't have any talent. Okay, that's why they keep pulling out the same plays. I mean, it reminds me of when there was one year in my son's high school when the football team lost every single game, and this was previously a nationally recognized program, and it was it was obvious that well maybe you ought to make some changes, but they never did. They never did because it's all a matter of you boys executing better. It's not that my plays suck. You have to execute better. And the coach had no ability to come up with anything different. Okay. And that's
it's like
exactly.
it's a lack of courage. I mean, in a way, it's a lack of vision. Like you get locked into. There's like a term for this in sociology. I just replacement. What is it? Replacement theory or something where people are like locked into a certain way of being, and they feel like that's it. That's their life. They
Well,
can't.
right. I mean, historically, I guess it worked for a short period of time during the so-called civil rights era, where there were landmark cases. But first of all, there weren't that many, and it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that's all they had. Now, the thing that fuels this, unfortunately, is that there are way too many people who go to law school, right? And then, as I've said a few times on this show, who in the world would take a $175,000 job over the ability to earn way more than that in a firm if you're any good? All right. So immediately you're selecting for people who are generally incompetent and a rare person that might really want to be a judge for the good of society, although
Mm.
I don't know if those even exist anymore. So you have a very flawed system, to be kind. I mean, let's face it. Look at the people on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Very corrupt. They just came out with this decision that's unbelievable. I mean, Alito completely blasted them. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a couple of good ones. Alito and Thomas, they seem to be quite genuine. But they rule that there could be no deportations of this busload of El Alagua gang members because somehow it wasn't processed properly. And meanwhile, by the way, the CIA has released information that indicates that Venezuela is trying to disturb this country by sending these people
Oh, of
deliberately.
course.
I mean, this is a subversion. But
So
how could the Supreme Court have ruled that way? I mean, what the hell? Even all three.
so the Supreme Court. You mentioned Alito and Thomas. Who else on there is any good? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
yeah,
the
more
three judges
more
are completely.
conservative than the others. And what
Yes.
about Amy Coney Barrett? What a disappointment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, when she came up, it was pretty
You know,
clear.
there's rumors that she's not the same person because her children are being threatened in school. She's got 7 children, and but they've let her know that she better play ball. But the point is that it's very
Well, hang
clear
on. All right. If that's the case,
she should resign.
then do something about it.
Yeah,
All
like
right.
resign, step away.
I mean, I don't even
But
know if that's true. I mean, think about it. Use your inductive reasoning here. All right, I'm a Supreme Court justice. I have a lot of power. My kids are being threatened in school. What do? Go to a local element? No. They go to some private school, unless she's a total lunatic and she's sending them to a DC public school. But even if that's the case, then either resign, as you say, or do something about it.
Right.
I don't
No,
think it's true.
yeah.
I think it's an excuse that she made because, look, I'm sorry, Chuck. When I saw her coming up, I said, this broad is as phony as a $3 bill.
Yes, I
Yeah, I'm
know.
such a do-gooder. I have all these kids I've adopted, from Mars and
No,
Jupiter.
I think nobody really thought much. I mean, Trump was able to squeeze her in the final weeks of his administration just before an election. I think people were just grateful that he was able to get anybody in there. But the
Yeah,
point is that now they're going to be probably ruling on this Maryland man, right?
the Maryland man,
The
right?
Maryland man. And they're probably going to be ruling against Trump in that
It
case.
doesn't matter, all right,
And
because
the point is that what can be done?
well,
They're not looking at the Constitution. The Constitution gives the executive branch complete carte blanche power to regulate immigration. It's that simple. There's nothing in the now the Constitution, the Congress can create statutory laws that regulate immigrate, like deportations, but they haven't done that. Trump has complete power as president, as do any president,
right.
to do this. And they're going to suddenly find out of thin air some kind of a constitutional ability to stop
I'm
him.
not sure that's going to happen. But even if it
Oh,
does,
I think it will happen.
well, I mean, President Bukele will refuse to release the guy.
Yeah, but that won't even matter. They'll probably use this, and then if Trump, God forbid, if Congress goes Democrat in the midterms, they'll impeach him for it.
Yeah, well, Congress ain't going to go Democrat if they keep pushing this
Okay.
agenda.
But that's what I think they have in mind. They're going to go Democrat, they'll impeach Trump, and they'll keep impeaching him until the end of the 2 years. And then when he leaves office, they'll throw him in prison. I think that's Steve Bannon has said that. Now, Steve Bannon might be somewhat colored in his opinion by the fact that they threw him in prison.
Threw him in prison, right?
So, I mean, that might, color his opinion on this. But I don't think he's too far wrong on it.
Yeah, but let's not forget that he did everything to secure the fact that he was thrown in prison. He could have feigned a little bit of cooperation, but he rubbed their face in it so much that he was daring them to put him in jail. All right.
Okay, but either way, it was for a misdemeanor. It
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, it
No,
was
no, I understand
right.
that.
I mean, who was it at the FBI? I think he lied to Congress. Something it was McCabe
Yeah.
lied to Congress about. It must have been a half a dozen times at least, and he's now a spokesman on MSNBC. I'm just saying that you know they can get something like that on Trump. They're trying to set it up, and they will do that. I mean, they're out to really stop him, to destroy whatever his legacy is. And you can see it, as we're talking about, on all levels. They're going after the immigration, they're going after the tariffs, they want to stop that. They've got lawsuits. Just today, another radical judge said that Trump's executive order calling for paper ballots and same-day voting is not constitutional. Really? I mean, it's all, it's no matter what it is. I mean, I was watching the other day Fox News, and RFK Jr. is putting in rules to stop some of these toxic chemicals from being put into candy.
Right.
Things like red dye, which is directly, there's evidence it causes cancer, giving it to children. I'm just waiting for a lawsuit because Big Pharma will shop around and find a radical judge who's part of the resistance, and they'll suddenly declare that it's unconstitutional to remove red dye. They don't care.
The other thing that might
As long
happen
as it hurts Trump, that doesn't hurt Trump.
is just as the rating of Congress is so low in public esteem. I think what's going to happen is that people are going to come around to realize that the judiciary isn't worth a bucket of spit. And they're going to, I think, to save their own image, they're going to clean up their own house. Okay. This nonsense that you can go forum shopping and find a district court judge. What a joke. What a joke.
That's exactly, and the fact that these judges are like dictators. So, Mike, I need to ask you this question.
Yes.
Being Catholic,
Yes, sir.
what are your observations with regard to the late Pope Francis?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. It was observed, I think, many years ago um, by, and I don't know who it was, but it was an interesting take on it, that in terms of the mainstream media, the only good Catholic is a bad Catholic.
Yeah, that sounds like the Boston Globe.
So the problem with the late Pope,
Yeah,
uh, most real Catholics did not like the guy at all. Right? He was an internationalist. He would appeal to people that think the Catholic Church is sort of a big social justice warrior organization. Uh, he was put in primarily by people like McCarrick, who was able to buy votes, and he was identified with that particular wing of the church.
do
He
you think
worked
that the
feverishly.
Jesuit had anything to do with anything, or is
I
that
don't think so. I mean, people like attacking the Jesuits because there have been some bad Jesuits, but there's been some very good ones.
right?
And I think the problem is he was always a socialist. Okay,
Right.
uh, he was a globalist. Uh, he fought against the traditional church to the point that, and this is what's so amusing, our local bishop here is Jose Garcia. All right. Now, this is the first time in decades that the Archbishop of Los Angeles was not created a cardinal. Why? Well,
Traditional.
Jose Garcia was considered to be too conservative by Francis. All right. Even if that's true, that should have nothing to do with becoming a prince of the church. So
Well, he
he,
seems to be somewhat at war with the American cardinalship, or not. I don't know.
well, I mean, the cardinals that were created before him and during his regime as pope are all despicable liberals, every single one of them. So no, he was, and I've told people that would come to me for advice for whatever reason. I said, look, in the history of the church, there have been some bad popes. Okay, this guy was one of them. All right, but he was very much liked by people that wanted the church to be an internationalist social justice organization, and they don't care about the fact that the primary goal of the Catholic Church is to save souls. All right. Francis didn't seem to have a whole lot of interest in that. He
Right.
was suppressing traditional masses. He worked like hell to remove the few Latin masses that even still exist. So, what was on the positive side? I have no idea.
He almost seemed like he was turning the Catholic Church into a Protestant denomination in many ways. Like he's going to be the next Lutherans. I mean, he was stripping away some of the great basic traditions and contexts of Catholicism, and he's replacing it. It says, well, somehow like putting it on the back burner. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what was coming up next, but my understanding is, and by the way, as a non-Catholic, nevertheless, I feel that I have a stake in it because the Roman Catholic Church is one of the great moral authorities in the universe, in the world. It's probably the number one authority, the oldest.
It would be even more so if it didn't become pro-gay.
Well, that's another thing. But the point is that I want the ship to sail right because it affects the morals of the world, whether you're Catholic or not. And so I am hoping and praying, frankly, that they pick a conservative pope, or at least a more Catholic pope.
Well,
And
as Bishop Vigano said, it's certainly not in the human realm to do that anymore because over 100 cardinals were appointed by Francis. Right.
yeah, see, that's what I
So,
heard, that he's appointed just about more than half of the cardinals, and they're all in his image.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is that miracles do happen, right? And we'll just have to see how it works out. There are some good guys out there
Right. I understand
who,
that there's this one cardinal, he's African, who's a very good conservative guy.
yeah, yeah.
And the church would benefit greatly from having an African pope, because Africa is one of the biggest growth areas for Catholicism, I think.
Well,
And
so, one of the greatest saints, of course, was from Africa,
that's right. St. Augustus was African, right?
and we'll just have to see how it works out. But what happens with the church is that there are people that are genuinely devout, and then there are people that I can only refer to as kiss ass Catholics. And these are the people that whatever Father says or whatever the hierarchy says, that's great. And I remember when I was back in Virginia, although this priest left and a real good one took over, but when we first moved to this parish, he seemed conservative, and he was. But every time the Pope came out with some ludicrous statement, he would always defend it. Well, he was misquoted or this, because God forbid you question the hierarchy. Okay. And there are people that have this idolatry that they're going to go after whatever the hierarchy says. And then,
Well,
the other side
it is a hierarchy. I mean, the Catholic Church has almost a pyramidal hierarchy. And I mean, look, the thing is that I think that since he became Pope, and in general, the main issues are homosexuality, feminism, and open borders.
yeah,
I'm trying to be blunt.
yeah, which he was in favor of and had nothing to do with the magisterium or church teaching.
Right.
So it's luck of the draw. I mean, there are people that are a little more conspiratorial about it, like Vigano, that claim that it was Francis and his group that forced out Pope Benedict to resign. So it's an organization. There's going to be all kinds of intrigue and deep statism.
Well, if there's any place that has a deep state, it's
They've been around for a while.
yeah, that goes way back. I mean, look what happened to John Paul I, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, 33 days in, and all of a sudden he wakes up one morning and he ain't waking up.
Yeah, yeah.
And the number 33 was significant according to conspiracy theorists, right? It was a Masonic number. Anyway, but
of course.
yes, but I mean, look again. I mean, I just hope and pray that they're able to, that a miracle happens, as you say, and somehow when the white smoke comes out of the chimney, you have a real conservative pope. If I was a Catholic with it, like for example, if I had a child in Catholic schools, I'd have a direct stake in it. I really hope for that. I don't have that kind of stake in it, but I have a stake in it, like anyone who cares about conservative values.
Okay, but here's the fundamental problem. Okay, you could get the most conservative pope in there in the world, but it's going to take centuries to change the institution. In other words, if you have a kid in a Catholic school, and some of the Catholic schools are pretty liberal,
Right.
just because of the people that are involved in education. They're not going to listen to any pronouncements. It's going to take a long, long time for this to change, just like it takes a long, long time for the deep state to change.
Although I understand that that some of the changes that happened in terms of like liberalizing the Catholic Church, they happened quickly. Like for example, I mean, I understand that the nuns were stripped of their authority almost overnight, and that the priests started to preach. I heard a caller say this on the day that Francis died to Jeff Cooner. He said, "My church, every sermon, the priest is pushing open borders. That's like the
Yeah.
biggest cause we have." And that was very open in terms of Francis.
Right, but that was individual with that priest,
Okay.
or maybe he's trying to curry favor with somebody. But you can certainly make an argument that Francis was in favor of that.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Very openly. Oh,
But
yeah.
Francis didn't control what homilies are going to be said.
Even in
Um,
his last comments with J.D. Vance, I don't think to him personally, but the head of the office made comments criticizing Trump's lack of compassion because he didn't have open borders. Plus, Catholic Charities was at the spearhead of the Biden's.
well, okay, Catholic Charities is in such disrepute that there are many parishes that don't even collect for them anymore.
Yeah, but they were the head group. I mean, even like at my synagogue, we had a spokesperson coming in from SIAS, which is the Jewish equivalent of pro immigration, and then there was this Lutheran group also that was very big. And she said, "Look, we take our marching orders from Catholic Charities. They are the boss. They're the ones who do the
They
lion's
had
share of the work."
lost such credibility. I mean, when it came out a number of years ago that a lot of their precepts were set up by Saul Alinsky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there are some bad organizations, and but people don't have the time to figure out all this stuff. I mean, the other one that was just dreadful was the traditional Good Friday collection would be for what's called Peter's Pence, which was originally for the Holy Land, and then it became discretionary for the Pope. But then it came out that 30%, some very large amount of those funds, went to the Democratic Party.
Oh my God, that's
So
like USA aid, right?
yeah, so the charity arm, at least the ones that people know of the church, unfortunately fell into disrepute. But on the other hand, when they do collections at Lent for the local diocese, that's pretty legit. That's always been pretty legit because it goes to, they can't screw around with that too much because we're going for these poor schools in the diocese, and we're going for legit poor people. And no, we're not giving a lot of money to LGBT. I mean, maybe there's some of that, but it's like anything else. If you go local, you have more control. If it starts getting international, it's just a whole different thing. So as you say, and as Vigano says, maybe it'll be a miracle, and you'll get something like the African cardinal in.
Right, right. I mean, or maybe it'll be a foreshadowing of the movie The Conclave. I don't know if did you see it?
What, where it's a transgender?
Yeah, I mean, or basically they got rid of the conservative black cardinal by finding the fact that he was quietly helping finance an illegitimate child, which I think is not a great sin. I mean, he was trying to do the right thing, but that was used as an excuse to push him out. And then they picked a hermaphrodite. So, I mean, which is very predictable for Hollywood. They figured, hey, we'll get an Academy Award, which they did.
Well, I mean, what was so troubling to me about that was that there were a number of supposed Catholics in the cast that, how can you go along with this crap? I mean, what, Ralph Fiennes wasn't able to get any other parts.
Well, I mean, it was a classic change agent movie. This is the greatest virtue you can find, the saintly,
Yeah, even if the movie doesn't make any money, it somehow doesn't matter. It's like Snow White, they lost $300 million on it.
But it serves the social purpose of changing society toward their gay agenda, I guess.
Maybe it would have, but no one watched it. So
Well, they all could bask in the glory of it and give each other big fat awards. Anyway, so Mike, what do you have coming up on the Substack?
Well, I got a couple of things brewing. Um, I'm just one of the things that's troubling me that I'm trying to work out, which would make a good article, is what is the appeal of the Democratic Party? All right. If I'm Joe Sixpack or anybody, why do I care about some gangbanger illegal alien? Please explain that to me.
I know they've got nothing else happening, as far as I know, and they're having a civil war between that nitwit David Hogg, who wants to, turf out anyone who's
Right.
in there to bring in even more radical people. And I loved Senator Kennedy's comment about AOC as the head of the party. He goes, AOC is the reason why, they have to put directions on the shampoo bottle.
Shampoo bottle, yeah.
I love that comment.
Well,
I
here's
mean,
the other
they
thing.
have no,
Why hire David Hogg? What's on his resume? I
well,
was a student at such and such high school where they had a shooting. Big
well,
deal.
the same reason they brought in Kamala Harris. I mean, they're all ruining the day, that they're playing that kind of cynical identity politics. They figured, oh, he'll get the young vote. He's going to bring the
Well, at least
millennial.
Harris was a U.S. senator. She was a vice president. I mean, I don't think she was that good, but she had something on her resume. Who is this guy?
He's just this twerp that they pulled out of, they figure he's articulate. He'll get the young vote. I mean, it's very cynical. And it's not working for them.
No.
They've got nothing. They really
Yeah,
don't.
they have no talent. And
I hope yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're going to come up with. Chuck Schumer. I mean, yikes. Elizabeth Warren, as usual, disgracing herself on some podcast. I don't know if you saw the footage of that. Has always been an embarrassment. She's lying about Biden's health condition.
why does it? Well, and she was asked to explain the lies. Well, when I saw him, he looked fine. What is her problem? All right. Does she need the job?
She is a perpetual liar about everything. Even in Massachusetts, liberals know this. It's horrible. I mean, no matter what the thing is.
So why do they keep her in? Why not bring in another idiot liberal? Why her? What's the appeal?
She's like, it's like Ted Kennedy. She's going to have that job for the rest of her life. They'll never get rid of her. I mean, it's just she's been installed.
Well, with Ted Kennedy, I can understand. Famous family, blah blah blah. Two dead brothers, blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
but he was a complete scoundrel, and everybody knew it. And yet he just these become. It's a cult thing here. I don't know if it's Massachusetts or if it's a liberal thing, but these people take on this almost deistic position. I mean, they become like, that's it. Once they're in there, they don't. It would take a huge event to get rid of them, and even then, I mean, I mentioned this last time about Michelle Wu. There's some big scandals going on there, but they're not going to report it here, and she's going to probably sail in.
Well, look how long it took him to get rid of Mendez in New
Right.
Jersey.
And meanwhile, she has an opponent, Josh Kraft, who's actually a pretty decent guy, and he's committed the ultimate sin for the Boston Globe by saying, look, I will work with Trump if I think it's good for the city of Boston. My interest is Boston. That's what I'd be elected to do, represent the city of Boston, and I will work with whoever I think can help my city. That was it for him. You can't say
Well,
that.
I don't know. I mean, there's a strange power that the Boston Globe has, which I don't understand. Maybe you can explain it someday. But first of all, who even reads newspapers anymore?
I don't know how it is, but the Boston Globe, I mean, look, I've been following them since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And they have this, I don't know, this ethereal grip on Boston and Massachusetts. I suppose it's similar to the way the New York Times has a grip too. And they're not read anymore. They had to abandon their magnificent palace-like office on Morrissey Boulevard. They sold it. Now they have just some dinky office in downtown Boston, and they share the printing plant with the Boston Herald, their old rival. I mean, they're not, and you look at the paper, it's shrinking. It's like, zzz, zzz, zzz. It's literally, it's just not, they laid off most of the people that were any good. And yet they continue to trug along with this kind of influence. They're running now a TV show, which is so dull, but yet there they are. They're still calling the shots. They still set the tone for what happens in the state. It's like it's almost like some kind of a language or a code that they've cracked. And the way they speak, it hasn't changed since I can remember. Back in the 60s, nothing has changed. And it somehow has this voice of authority. I mean, there's a term in sociology for this. I'll have to look it up. But it's like they just have this omnipotent ability in this state. They've never been challenged, and they're going to decide who they're going to anoint. And as far as Michelle Wu is concerned, the Globe will do what they always do. They will make sure that this story that I mentioned last time is not going to be released. It's not going to be known to enough people in this state. And then after she's safely reelected, they'll wait till Christmas week.
Put it on page 53. Right.
No, they'll release it. They want to maintain a shred of, because at that point, she's safe. She's been installed, and she's got a big term, and people will forget about it 4 years later. That's how they roll.
Is she doing any good for the city? I mean, despite all this crap?
No, I mean, she just ran up like a $2 billion deficit. And we take a look at, and again, the Globe isn't going to talk about it, but there are elements of that which have been published in more subversive media outlets that I follow. And it's stuff like, we need to have an officer to figure out why lesbians drink beer. I don't know, some weird, like transgender office to figure out how to make sure that people use the right pronouns. And that costs what? $10 million. This one, we're putting in a new office they're changing the bathrooms. That costs $30 million. In other words, she's putting the city into bankruptcy. And now they don't have the money. So what is she doing? Very typical. She's going to blame Trump. It's all Trump's fault. And the Globe will go with that. And it's very strange. I mean,
is anybody attacking the Globe?
The who?
Is anybody attacking the Boston Globe?
Not effectively.
Jeff Keener.
Jeff Kooner does, yeah. And I don't know why he has a big show on WRK. They're trying to get rid of him. They've been trying to move him out from day one, but he's got stuff, they're looking at him under a microscope. He's very courageous. I mean, I really admire him.
You see, it's inexplicable to me, because if you go to Boston and talk to normal people, they're not liberal. So I've never understood Massachusetts. I really haven't.
I mean, look, the ultimate maybe answer to that is that the elections have always been fixed here.
Well, that's the California thing too.
Yeah, they're California elections, and that goes way back to the days of James Michael Curley. That's not new. The precinct ward healers. There's a good book, a sort of a quasi-fiction book, novel about James Michael Curley called The Last Hurrah. It's a classic. I've read it. It captures Boston in the 1930s, and it hasn't changed. And he was extremely corrupt, and he had his ward healers handle elections. They're doing the same thing. It's just this inevitable kind of fascistic, corrupt, I don't mean to point fingers here, but Irish, because, you get, I'm sorry to say it, because it's like ingrained. And you get great Irish intellectuals and great Irish poets, but that's not part of this. This is more the old Irish, political, guard that's been controlling Boston. Not that they're any better than the old Yankee guard. They were worse. But it's just Boston has always been a backwater. when it comes to the kind of a machine-controlled political entity. It's not as bad as like Detroit or Newark, where they're literally driving the city into the ground.
Yeah.
They do have some conservative values when it comes to keeping, law and order and keeping the economy running well. That they do. I'll credit them for that. Boston, when it comes to economy, is very conservative. But it's still this corruption that pervades, and it's a culture that it's just no one's ever been able to take it on. So you have
Well, that explains it.
and Michelle Wu is a classic figurehead for this rotten machine. She really is.
All right. Well, good. That helps explain it.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
somebody should do a book on Boston. Anyways, and that's one book that you could get in big trouble if you write it. Yeah. So anyway, Mike, but I'll talk to you
all
next week, and
right.
God bless
Sounds good.